Welcome to the Grap Up, your monthly blast of cold takes on the world of professional wrestling, available everywhere good podcasts are sold. I am the intrepid traveler, Mark Robinson, and with me, the editor of the Wrestling Observer. He is Bryan Rose. Bryan, I don't know how it is for you at the moment, but the temperature has dropped somewhat severely. I've now got my little beanie on. I look like the little indie dev hipster that I am. I don't know how it is for you guys, but I am feeling the cold in my fingers these days.
It's warm in the afternoons, cold at night. And by cold, I mean like 50 degrees, 60 degrees maybe. I think that's not that cold compared to other people's regions. So, yeah, it's still pretty warm here.
I
It's
have
not glacial.
I have on my Windows PC. I have a little thermometer, and I'm seeing a little frost icon. So
Oh,
I think my
that means
PC is
cold.
telling me, yeah, my PC is telling me it is cold. It has been quite the month. As always, I do like to find out what you've been playing. For anyone who is listening to this, you should probably know that I do have another podcast, a link to the cast, which is our video game podcast here on the Link to the Cast network. But yeah, Bryan, it's been a pretty hectic month or so in terms of video game releases. Like in the last month alone, we've had the likes of Spider-Man and Alan Wake 2 come out, on top of a couple of other heavy hitters throughout the year. It's just absolute chaos at the moment. I don't know
Yep.
like how much kind of pressure you put on yourself to play things throughout the year. Probably not as much as I do. But I'm wondering, as we get towards the end of the year, if there's anything in particular that stood out for you this year so far. On the
I
spot,
mean,
obviously.
like overall, it's probably Zelda, right? I mean, I played the first one on the Switch, and it was very good. It was very, 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 very good. And then I played Breath of the Wild, and it's just incredible. I'm uh, stunned by how in depth everything is, and the puzzles are awesome. The experience was incredible. I can't think of a better game in quite a while than Breath of the Wild, even though I didn't complete it. I with those games, it's kind of like just experiencing the world, and I did spend about 60 hours with it, and I still haven't completed it yet, but I'm pretty sure that's my game of the year. Mario Wonder came out last month, and that was an incredible game. Uh, just so much fun to play, and so much better than the new Super Mario Brothers games that were on the Switch and on the Wii U and on the 3DS. All of those pale in comparison to Mario Wonder, which is so chock full of ideas and concepts that I really liked and really out of the box and clever. Uh, People are saying like, "Is this better than Mario World?" And I can't say if it is because Mario World is like a 30-year-old game, and people were probably saying the same thing about Mario World. Uh, like now, people are saying now about Mario Wonder, so I can't compare the two, but uh, that's also high on my list. I played Spider-Man 2 this month, and that's on my list. Probably not as high as those two, but it's up there. Right now, I'm playing Pikmin 4, and that's very, very, very good. Better than I thought. I played the demo, and I was kind of like not sure if I was going to get the full game or not. But then I completed Spider-Man, and I'm like, okay, I'm looking for another game to play. And I played the demo of Pikmin 4, and I liked it, so I'm going to play this. I'll go ahead and give it a shot. So I played it, and it's also very good. And it's probably going to end up on my Game of the Year list. I haven't. Only spent about uh 3 or 4 days with it, so I'm not like entirely sure yet. But that's also up there, and those are the games I'm thinking about right now for Game of the Year. Yeah, just a lot of Nintendo stuff. A lot of Nintendo stuff is very strong this year. Both Mario and Zelda are just very, very, very good in their own ways. Completely different ways when you think about it between the open world of Zelda and the 2D platforming of Mario. But they're so good at what they do, and they they exceeded my expectations on both levels. So those are the two strong Game of the Year types I'm thinking of.
Yeah, a lot of those are likely to come up when we do our Game of the Year recordings. A lot of strong shouts there. I have Spider-Man 2 sitting on the entertainment cabinet in the living room. So at some point in the next few days, I need to kind of get started on that. But I've got one or two things I need to finish off before then. Let's roll into the wrestling. So October was kind of light in some ways, but I do think one thing that I want to talk about that has been not just a pressing concern of mine, but it certainly has been a hot topic of discussion in a number of different areas. A number of different podcasts have been talking about this, and that is the overall booking direction and tonal shift of AEW in, I mean, you can say the past couple of months. It feels like it's, I don't know, somewhere kind of the middle of this year onwards.
Yeah.
Um, there was a tonal shift, and people have been pointing fingers in a number of directions. We don't have to kind of go too into the granular of like who is to blame for this, but I just wanted to talk about the actual booking and what they're doing, and effectively why I'm not enjoying it, and
Yeah.
why my interest in All Elite Wrestling is really the lowest it has been since its inception back in 2019. First of all, I would go to you, Brian, and I want to check and see if you're on the same wavelength of me, if you have noticed this change, if where your interest levels are with AEW at this point.
Well, I'll tell you, I was on the fence about going to Full Gear, which is in Los Angeles, and eventually I decided, I'm so unenthused by this Full Gear booking, I'm probably going to skip it. I mean, it's kind of too late now to even reconsider, but yeah, I'm not going. It's not worth spending all that money to go see which I'm sure the pay per view will be good and the wrestling will be good, but I'm thinking about my interest in AEW 2 years ago, and I'm thinking about my interest in AEW now, and it's changed. There's definitely been a tonal shift in AEW in the last few months. Probably dating back to All In and the build to that show. There's a lot more emphasis on comedy, a lot more emphasis on skits, a lot more emphasis on um just I don't know. There's a lot of comedy stuff that isn't landing, and it's very Vince WWE like, where you have they claimed all of a sudden Max Caster's being a real weirdo. All of a sudden, MGF is now like on in almost every um show, not show, every segment basically. Feuding with like 5 or 6 different people, and some of it's comedy, and I don't do you really want your world champion being in like comedy segments all the time? The Roderick Strong stuff, which I thought was kind of funny at first, that has died a death, and there's like that's one character I don't want to see on TV every week because it's so annoying. And those segments with him and Adam Cole, which lasted like 3 or 4 weeks, that got really annoying by the end because it's like, where are we going with this? And that's actually like a theme of AEW right now. Where are we going with all of this? They have one long-term storyline where there's a devil character, and the devil's beating up a bunch of people, and the devil's appearing on screen, and there's some speculation about that, and maybe everything will make sense once that's revealed. But there used to be a time where I would give AEW the benefit of the doubt because I would question something, and then by the end, it'd be like, "Oh, okay, I get why they did that." That's starting to kind of wane, and I think a lot of it is comedy based. Maybe you can blame people who've come on board and pitched those ideas, but at the same time, at the end of the day, that's also on Tony Khan, who is the head booker of this promotion. It's very much like, well, you blame this writer in WWE. I used to hear about the writers all the time in WWE, and you never hear about them anymore. But at the end of the day, it's Vince. It's Vince's booking, and so now it's Triple H's booking, and we'll get to that after a while on Triple H's booking. But yeah, I don't. I was going to get to a point, but I completely forgot. But you know, the booking right now is just not what it used to be. It's just oh, there we go. Okay, I remember now. And a lot of this also dates back to Collision when Collision debuted, and that's another 2-hour show. And at first, because of CM Punk and the politics games and everything, you did have separate matches and separate people on separate rosters, and that was kind of interesting for a while. But once CM Punk, blew up or whatever you want to call that, there's been a lot of matches lately where it's like it's Sting and Darby Allin versus the Outrunners or whatever their names are. It's a lot of those matches where I'm like, okay, I used to remember a time where I would look at a lineup on AEW and be like, wow, this is very exciting. I can't wait. And actually that lineup for Dynamite was significantly better than previous lineups I've seen. But I see the Collision lineups and they announced maybe 2 matches and the rest of the 2 hours are basically squash matches. I look at Rampage and those lineups. I mean, maybe there's a Lucha match here and there. That lineup's nothing to sneeze at. Sometimes there's Dynamite lineups that aren't announced until Tuesday. Sometimes, or they announce it over the weekend, or they announced it on Monday. It's starting to feel a lot like WWE in that they have 3 shows that they need to fill, and a lot, and their roster. They have a big roster. When you think about it, they have a lot of talented people, but in terms of star power, they're kind of. You look at these lineups and they're kind of lacking. I think it's because the move to more hours of TV every week. Now they have about 5 hours to book every week, and you can't have the lineups like you used to when it was just Dynamite.
And that's
Now
also
it's
not including Ring of Honor as well.
yeah, Ring of Honor. You look at those cards and it's like it's dark. It's AEW Dark with a new name because there's not much going on. There's a few storylines involving like Cole Carter and Griff Garrison, and it's like no, that's not going to connect with a lot of people. It's
Yeah, I
very
do
small
think
amount of people are subscribed to Honor Club.
I do think that a lot of this, maybe not so much the tonal direction with the comedy that you mentioned, but certainly with the inclusion of Collision
Yeah,
and because you mentioned there that the AEW roster is big, and if they had decided to go with a full on hard brand split between Dynamite and Collision, while you could make the complaints about the similarities between WWE and AEW with that, which would be entirely fair, I do think that if you had had those 2 hard splits, for a start, you've got the roster to facilitate that because there are plenty of. You can go to the AEW roster website and you can see quite a few wrestlers where you need to use a fucking search warrant to find them,
yeah.
um, and they're just not being utilized as
There's
best
a
as they could.
lot. There's a lot of people who appear on those shows and just vanish
Yeah.
for months and then they come back.
And so
Very weird.
a hard brand split would have been one way to facilitate those rosters a lot stronger.
Yeah.
Though to be honest, for me, and it's very easy to sit here and play armchair booker, but the 2 things that I would never have done, and obviously I understand that I'm not a business person, is I would have never have agreed to have Collision and um oh god, what the hell was my other point? Can't even remember now, but that's the crucial one is I never would have had Collision because you can go back to the late 90s with WCW and look, Nitro was already having issues before Thunder appeared, but as soon as Thunder appeared, that just you spread the creative ideas too thin, and you're having to facilitate that across 2 different shows every single week, and there's only so many wrestling storylines to go around with
Yeah.
with your talent. And I knew this was always going to happen, regardless of whether you had Punk there or not. There's just too much wrestling, and that's not a thing that's just on AEW. Like in general, there is just too much wrestling. Um,
That's the one of the things about wrestling history. It's always a catch-22. When you get popular, you get more content. The networks will provide you more content, which is more money, which you're not going to turn down. but then the quality starts to dip.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
that's what we're seeing now with the AEW, where we're seeing quality dip. Not that the shows are actually last week's show was pretty bad, but this week's show wasn't so bad. But yeah, I mean, these aren't the shows that really got me into Dynamite or AEW in general. These are shows that are fine, but they're not doing a whole lot for me. It's kind of like watching WWE and not with better wrestling, but still with the kind of similar storylines where it's like I'm watching this and is everybody laughing or is just the people who wrote this are they laughing?
Yeah, for
It's
example,
kind of like
like
that.
on this week's Dynamite, you had the segment with Tony Storm and Hikaru Shida to build
Yeah.
to their match at Full Gear. And while I do enjoy the performance of Tony Storm, and she's absolutely like committed to the bit, fair enough. It's a cartoon. It's a live action cartoon
Yeah.
in black and white, with Tony Storm's character that is just as a fucking cartoon. And Hikaru Shida, God bless her, is not exactly the most compelling performer. I mean, she's having to talk in a language that she's not
I mean,
comfortable
we
with.
can go on a whole nother tangent about the AEW Women's Division.
But I'm not as like fussed about that as some other people are. But just using that small segment there to talk about, like, okay, here is a match that you're trying to build for your next pay-per-view, and there is no single fucking element of that promo
No,
segment that has me in any way
it
interested.
kind of makes me think, why didn't Tony Storm win the title? It wasn't she like at what's it called? All In. Wasn't she in the triple threat match? Or am I thinking of someone else?
The as in All in London.
Yes.
Yeah, that was the four-way. You had Soraya, Tony Storm, Sheeta, and Britt Baker. Britt
Yeah, if
Baker, by
she
the way,
was,
there's
if
someone you can't find with a search
she,
warrant.
well, I have no idea where she's at. Where,
Probably
where,
looking after Adam Cole, I guess.
I guess. But it's
Yeah.
been
I
weeks.
mean, I think they were playing up. I think that they just wanted to do the Soraya in the UK, but I also think
Yeah,
as well that a lot of the catalyst for why Tony Storm has this current gimmick is the fact that she lost the title when she kind of lost her mind.
that's
Which
true.
that element of it, I was all for at the start. Like she was kind of doing a sort of unhinged character that was infusing elements of, like, the 50s and 60s golden era of Hollywood, but they've just struck a chord with part of it that worked and then leaned so far into it that it's removed any sense of anything kind of grounded in reality.
It still doesn't make sense to me though why Hikaru Shida won the title when the more natural story is probably Soraya versus Tony Storm.
That is also an
I,
absolutely fair
no,
point.
I don't know anybody who thought, why did Hikaru Shida win this title?
Yeah,
And she's just
yeah,
kind of been doing nothing. She's been defending the title, but I don't know. There's nothing clicking with this run with me and Hikaru Shida. It's just very weird that they've pushed the Tony Storm thing hard across both Collision and Dynamite, so it makes sense for her to get the next shot. So I expect her to win, and I expect her to hold the title for a while, like until Jamie Hayter. I don't know where she's been at. Well, she's been injured, but I would guess she's maybe coming back soon. I have no idea. They said she would be out for the rest of the year, and the year's almost over, so we'll see. But I don't know.
yeah.
The women, I have a lot of problems with the women's division. Honestly, I can go
I,
on about that for a long time. There's a lot of
I
issues.
have a bigger issue with babyface world champion MJF.
Yeah,
Um, for me to begin with, I would have never have had MJF win the world championship. I was so much more into the idea that he was the guy who would continue to big himself up as like the best thing. And he would, win matches here and there, but he could never win the big one. He could never be the world champion. But he was so delusional that he would still continue to call himself the best, but he could never kind of back it up. And look, I will say this: when he first became world champion, I remember some point early this year, I did a quick search, and MJF and Brock Lesnar had the same amount of matches in like a year or 2 year span. Like it was not a
yeah.
lot of matches at all. and I will say this: he's had an uptick in terms of the quantity of matches he's had, and I'll also give
Yes,
it to him that his quality of matches have more or less been pretty good. Anything
they're fine.
anything in regards to the Ring of Honor tag stuff, no, I can skip
I
that.
don't get that at all,
Yeah,
but whatever.
you should have just stripped him, be done with it, move on from it. But
Yes.
his stuff as world champion, or just in terms of his actual wrestling output, I don't really have an issue with that. But I find his character as this babyface world champion, just because of like the way that his character has been built up since pretty much his introduction into the company, he has been like the worst of the worst, the villain of all villains. And I've never been able to, as the babyface, buy into that 180 that they've tried to do. I can't buy into it because of everything that's come beforehand.
Yeah.
And I've got to be honest, I don't think I'm the only one, because you can look at the ratings and you can
You-
look at where
yeah.
things are at the moment, and you can also, most crucially, look at the tickets being sold, and it's obviously not clicking, because I just think that MJF as a babyface world champion is just one of those things that is not meant to be. Also, adding the fact that I think he's so leaning into a lot of the things that he was obviously influenced by, late 90s Attitude Era WWF, and a lot of that stuff just has not aged particularly well. And I think he has not read the room on that.
I think in terms of I think the reason why MGF has been like so much on these shows as of late is because he is the ratings mover. So I think in a sense it's clicking in that way. But then I also think about I mean I'm looking at the character and he's like, I'm your scumbag. And I'm like, okay. I mean, it's working in some respects. I mean, the crowd loves him and they like to cheer him. And, the ratings prove that he's pretty much the draw in AEW right now. But is it going to give them like record numbers? No. Um, and also, every time I see him, I feel like, okay, there's still going to be a swerve somewhere where he just churns hard on the fans, because that is what his character has been for the last 3 or 4 years, where they tease him turning and then he doesn't. And for this one, they have turned him, I guess. I mean, he's kind of in that gray area where he's still a jerk, but I'm your scumbag. That's his line. It is still weird to see MGF as a face because he's so much more effective as a heel. But after 4 years of being a heel, you do kind of want to go in another direction. So I get that. And the Adam Cole stuff has been hit and miss. Largely, it's been kind of miss as of late because with the devil stuff and with Adam Cole, he's still on every week pretty much. He's now on video call and he's
I
growing a beard and stuff.
He just looks like shit. All right, there's no elegant way I
Yeah,
can put this. I would not have Adam Cole on a crappy phone call
yeah.
recording or whatever, looking like he does at the moment. And look, he's injured and he can look however he wants. That's fine. Just you don't have that on television. You just fucking don't.
I didn't buy this at first, but I am starting to buy into the idea that he's behind the devil stuff and he might not be injured after all. I could buy that.
I
there,
mean,
there
that's
seems to
great,
be
but I
a
also
lot
don't
of
care. That's
yeah.
my problem.
That's
Because
the
you
thing.
mentioned earlier, right, about how everything with this whole devil thing, it makes no sense at the moment, but it might pay off in the end.
Yeah.
And I would argue that when you're doing wrestling storylines, you need the journey as well as the destination to it has to be a whole thing. And currently, because I don't care about the journey, I don't care about the destination.
Yeah, because I think the idea is with Adam Cole being on TV every week, it gives you the idea that he's injured, he's out. But also, why is he on TV every week if he's going to be gone for 9 months? this break apparently is very severe and bad, and he won't be back for a while. But yet he's still on TV every week. Britt Baker has disappeared for reasons nobody really knows, or nobody's reported on why she's been gone. You do start to form ideas and theories on why that is, and I am starting to think more and more that maybe he's behind it, and Roderick Strong and the Kingdom are behind it, and it's all an elaborate plan to get back at MJF and go after the world title. And that if that is the payoff, then okay. But at the same time, I'm seeing this Roderick Strong character, and I'm very annoyed by it. I'm seeing the interaction with MJF and Adam Cole, and it's like it's been going on for maybe a little too long now.
And it also completely cheapens the All In finish. The whole
Yeah.
thing at the end of that show was that even though these two beat the shit out of each other for half an hour, at the end of it, the friendship overcame the title, and that was more important, which I wouldn't say I necessarily agree with, but at least in the context of the storyline, all right, that was your conclusion, and now these two have solidified that they're best friends. And obviously, look, the injury to Adam Cole derailed whatever they were going to do. And I remember people saying at the time, there's like, well, you can't really have either of them turn on each other because you've done this crescendo at Wembley now, unless you wanted to drag the story out for like another year, which I don't really want to do. I'd rather move on to the next thing now. But they obviously had to change plans because of the injury, and I just like MJF. Whether it's this whole Adam Cole thing that I don't care about, the Jay White feud, which is fine, but I wouldn't exactly say as a world title match it's lighting my world on fire.
No.
And then the MJF Kenny Omega 3-day build, which is just inexcusable. There's no other way to put it. All right, this is a genuine, legit first time matchup that you're doing in this company. You have got the current world champion, who is several days out from topping Kenny Omega, who was at that time the longest reigning world champion. There is no reason that should not be something that you build to for several weeks. And look, if you want to do it as a television match, fine, whatever. But that cannot be a 3-day build. It just cannot, And considering Omega's been beaten like a drum for the last couple of months in his Don Callis feud, they're just that is a thing that felt like it came together at the last minute, because it probably did come together at the last minute. And that I can't accept. 2 years ago, that would never have happened. That thing would have been circled on a calendar 6 months out, and it'd be like, right, how do we get to that end destination? And look, it was an incredible match because you've got two very, very talented wrestlers. The outcome was never really in doubt, and the match quality was never in doubt. But that's just inexcusable in 3 days build.
Yeah. I was kind of more whatever on them with the 3-day build, and I'll tell you why. Because they can do it, and then they can always go back to it and do it again and do a proper build. So I'm not like offended they did the 3-day build. It is surprising though, and I do agree with the fact that if this took place 2 years ago, it wouldn't have, because there's definitely a different mentality behind the booking, and this is another example of the more I don't know how to describe it, kind of booking of fly on the fly, which is very much which again reminds me of Vince McMahon WWE, where there was no long-term plan. Everything was being booked by the week. Storylines made no sense. There's no proper build. We would find out cards for shows like a week before the show took place. And that's kind of like where we're at now with AEW, where they announce maybe 1 or 2 matches for next week's Dynamite. And then we have to find out the rest on social media or on Rampage or on Collision. There's a lot more of that lately, and that's kind of disappointing because these are still better than those Raws and those SmackDowns of 2018-19 where they were just completely awful. But it does start to remind me of, man, I wish there was something else to watch other than WWE. And then AEW came and presented a product that was completely different from WWE. That was a very good thing. But now here we are in 2023, and I'm not saying WWE is perfect. They're far from it. And we'll probably touch on that in a little bit. But their shows have long-term builds and stuff makes sense. And AEW, I'm not saying nothing makes sense, but it's much more on the fly now, and it's not as compelling as a result.
Yeah. There's also like the last thing that I'll harp on about in regards to this. And they've been guilty on some aspects of this for since their inception, really. And I was just really always hoping that they wouldn't do this. But there's certain little production cues. Things like
Yeah,
the invisible camera is kind of like the big one. Um, I still to this day it grinds my gears whenever um someone someone's in a beatdown in the ring. So a baby face is getting beat down in the ring, and then someone from the back comes out. But before they come out, their entrance music has to
their
play, then
entrance
they
music
come
has
out.
to play.
That since the first time I ever saw that drove me insane because it just makes no fucking logic whatsoever.
No,
And the absolute epitome of how ridiculous that looks was and I guess we can segue into WrestleDream with this. You have the debut of Adam Copeland, and you've got Darby Allin, who is just being absolutely massacred in the ring, and he's ready to be concertoed. And before it can happen, the lights go out, the screen
and then there's
appears,
a music video.
we get a fucking music video. Adam Copeland comes out. He doesn't even run to the ring. He first has to do his pose, and he has to run to both sides of the entrance ramp. And it's
Yeah,
just like, I'm sorry, Christian
he
Cage
has
just
to
had to
do.
stand
Yeah,
there for about at least 6 to 7 minutes while this
yeah.
whole thing goes on. And
That's WWE.
it's just the most baffling fucking thing to see. Like, I mean, again, we can talk all day and long about like how to introduce people. And over the years, I think they've done certain things the right way. I remember the way that they introduced Swerve Strickland to the company. It was just like Tony Schiavone was on the entrance ramp. It's like, hey, here's our new signing. Swerve Strickland comes out, already a beacon of charisma, looking fucking dressed to the nines. And I'm like, yeah,
Yeah,
that's a star right there. And that's how I would introduce all of my fucking wrestlers. Maybe you can make the argument every now and again you want to introduce someone in a different way, but it's like if we're trying to apply real world logic to this, if Darby Allin had won the match, just say that Darby Allin had won that match and he became the new TNT champion, where exactly was Adam Copeland going to come out then? Was he going to come out at the end and steal Darby Allin's thunder? Like, what was the plan? You know, it's and I understand that I'm overthinking and I'm way overthinking it, but the fact that I can ask that question is a problem.
yeah. It's
There's not a thing I can give you a question or a way to respond to that.
it's
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 just me
it's it's
ranting.
it's very WWE. It is very WWE. They invented that, and unfortunately now it's kind of everywhere now. It's a WWE trope for sure, and they're responsible for that. I remember a few months ago there was a beatdown and Bianca Belair came out, but she had to do her hair pose before she ran down to the ring to make the save. It's like, really?
Or any time that Charlotte Flair would have to come out for a run in and she'd be wearing
Yeah,
like 10-inch heels. It's just
yeah.
like nothing about this is practical.
There's a
Oh
thing in
dear.
WWE where they want the women to wear like very large heels, I guess to emphasize their height or something. That is kind of,
Yeah,
especially Charlotte. I don't know. I don't know.
she doesn't
Weird.
need it.
No,
But with that said, so Wrestle Dream took place way back on the 1st of October.
I I'm gonna struggle to remember this show.
So I've got here, I ended up with, and you mentioned this as well, and it is a fair point to make out, that their pay-per-views at least do still consistently hit a very high bar in terms of the quality of
This is a
output.
good show.
Now, it has to be said that it's becoming very apparent that they are going to, whether it's a monthly or like every 6 week
It is
schedule for their pay-per-views. They did announce World's End
World's
will be
End.
coming in December with a lacking apostrophe in Worlds, which triggered me. Um,
That's
and
annoying.
it's we're gonna have to see if they're able to keep up that level of consistency with the quality of the shows, because if they lose that, then it's game over, because um you're trying to go after an audience that already has the product, that their thing they want to watch. They're not going to watch your show. If you lose like us, who will just want to watch good wrestling, then
There's
that's
already
it.
too much good wrestling every week to add
Exactly.
another pay-per-view.
Exactly.
And WWE has them, a bunch of them, and AEW already feels like they have a lot. There's 3 AEW shows a week. There's 3 WWE shows a week. It's overkill. Not everybody can watch it.
Oh, excuse me. I don't. I'm at the point I have to cherry pick now. I just,
Yeah.
I've never watched a full episode of Collision, because I just don't want to get up on a Sunday morning and watch 2 hours of wrestling. I want to go for a walk. I want to spend time with my partner. I want to cook. I want to do anything that isn't stare at the fucking screen for 2 hours. But that's besides the point. WrestleDream, yeah, was a really solid show though, from Seattle, Washington. As mentioned, the debut of Adam Copeland. I guess actually, I will say, so we're now over a month into Adam Copeland being in the company. There's a couple of things of note. Hasn't made a single difference to the ratings of the product or the ticket sales of the product. Mystico's one appearance has, I think, did more to bump up their tickets than Copeland's done
That's true.
in a month.
That market moved when they announced Mystico.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I Look, it makes sense to bring him in and do the thing with Christian Cage. Yeah, I'm not going to argue with
Uh,
the logic of
you
that.
can tell by the booking that Tony Khan really, really likes the idea of having Edge and Christian in AEW. And so that's going to get a lot of time. And they are going to have a singles match eventually. Maybe at World's End. I don't know.
Mm,
But you can tell Tony Khan is very excited about this because they get a lot of screen time.
yeah. Um, but I don't think it's going to make a difference. Like, I'm sure
No.
the two of them will put together a very competent and easily to follow storyline, and I'm sure they'll have a perfectly solid match. But I just don't think it's a business mover. And
Someday we should do like a Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame thing, and we can talk about Edge because he's always on the ballot every year, and I have not
it's just
voted for him every year because he is a very good worker. He always has great matches. In his WWE run, even though I had problems with some of the booking, I thought his matches with Seth Rollins were great.
yeah.
He's never been somebody who people like go to see. Like people will go to see Roman Reigns. People will go to see John Cena, obviously, because those whenever John Cena returns, ticket sales go crazy.
Yeah.
People don't go to see Edge. And as good as he is, he's not like at the level of Ishii where you get in based on just work alone. He's
Yeah.
somebody who has had good feuds. He's a good promo. He's good in just about every way, but he is not somebody that draws. And I don't know why, but he never has. It's never. I don't know if that retirement quote unquote match he had a few months ago with Sheamus, if that even drew. But maybe it did. I don't know. But you just look at in terms of ratings and in terms of stuff. He's never been that guy.
Look, here's the thing. He had that period of time in 2006 where he did make a difference.
Yeah.
And um, you can make some arguments about like where he was slotted in at certain points of that year. Um, I think you could make a reasonable argument that they should have gone all in with Cena and Edge at that year's WrestleMania instead of Triple H, but no one was getting ahead of
Yeah,
fucking Triple H
there
when it
was
comes to that.
stuff at the time like, do you really need to take that title away from Edge so quickly? Because he really did do great things with that title in the short amount of time he had it.
Yeah,
and they
and
took it from him too soon.
that whole feud with Cena obviously solidified him at a certain point. But I do think that, there was always a ceiling with Edge, and it was the idea that he was a good foil for your babyface, but he was never going to be the top guy. Certainly
Yeah,
not during that period, because Cena was the guy, and you're never going to have your heel be the top guy unless he's like a business mover on a different degree, like Triple H was in the year 2000. So he's always going to be at that level. But because of the way that WWE works, they will just continue to tell you that, this guy is a star and is at this level and whatnot. And obviously, business says otherwise. And, we've seen over the last couple of years in this last run that he had that he had a couple of decent matches here and there. I don't think the booking helped him in some aspects. I don't think the pandemic helped him, obviously, in other aspects.
yeah.
There was
That
no
match with Randy Orton,
there
that
was no
infamous
reason for him
match.
to win the Rumble in 2020 21. Um, so yeah, look, he's obviously, and he always has been an earnest fan of wrestling. He has been a wrestling fan since he was a child. Um,
Yeah,
he genuinely loves wrestling, and that and
I don't have any problems with him. I mean,
no,
just because I don't think he's a Hall of Famer doesn't mean I think he's not a great wrestler or
no, no,
anything,
of
because
course
he
not.
is.
And I think the idea that he would want to come to AEW and face off against a bunch of wrestlers he's never faced before, but again, I have no issue with that. But I do think, um, I wonder with Tony Khan if he understood exactly like what he was getting, and I'm hoping that he didn't put too much stock into thinking that this was something that was gonna, change, do things for their business in a way that CM Punk did, because it's just not the
He's
same,
not. He's not CM Punk.
No.
He I don't know. I think he likes the idea of having Edge and Christian in there because he was probably a fan of their tag team back in 1999, 2000 when they were a hot tag team. And now they can do the split that he can do the split that he always wanted, because that split in 2001, it wasn't great. And nobody really remembers when they split up. I think they did the feud and they had a few matches and it was kind of, it was fine, and then they never really went back to it. It wasn't like a big time feud, and now they can do the big time feud. So we'll see. And eventually, they're going to end up getting back together and doing that team again. So
You would imagine at some point we'll get that, but just the
yeah,
idea of doing Edge and Christian versus the Hardys at this point is, oh baby.
the Hardys have seen better days.
Yeah. So let us get to this show. Highlights from this show. I thought Swerve Strickland and Adam Page just had a tremendous singles match,
Yeah,
just a
that was a
phenomenal
really good
grudge
match.
match that had all the trappings of like a traditional AEW feud. It felt heated, it felt intense, it had realism to it. And those two just went out there and just fucking delivered. And, these are just two of the guys that you just want. I mean, Adam Page is someone they should have been building this company around anyway, but
They are
things
always
things
really
happen.
start stop on him. I don't know why. I mean, that's the problem with a lot of people on the AEW roster. Ricky Starks is also another problem, but like they are always afraid to like really push him, give him speaking time. And whenever he gets speaking time, he blows it out of the park. He's really good. But like I don't know. I mean, even after this match, which was really good, I thought this was an excellent match. The build to their next match, which will be at whatever the next pay per view is, I
It's full
forget the
gear.
name already. Full Gear. I already forgotten. There's too many pay per views now. Um, Now the build to that show, I mean, it's like so WWE tropes, like Swerve breaking into his house and nobody really seems to care. Swerve, I mean, Hangman Page barely seems to care until yesterday when he finally beat up Swerve with a steel chair. I mean, it's like that's very WWE. And has there been like one good home invasion angle in the history of pro wrestling? I don't think so. I mean, everybody remembers when Pillman and the Gun and Steve Austin. That was 30 years ago, and even people didn't really even like that back then. And now
we
we're
definitely don't
doing
need
like a
more guns in
PG
wrestling.
we did the PG version of that. We're doing the PG version of that now, and it's not as effective. And I think Swerve is really, really good, and I think he should have been put at a higher level after WrestleDream. But he just kind of seems to be. We're just kind of doing this again, and it's not as
I mean,
good
look,
as it was before.
I would rather they be doing this again than doing nothing at all. So I don't
I
have an issue in
guess
that
it's
aspect.
better than being off TV for weeks.
Exactly. Yeah, I think I've said this before on this podcast that if I'd been in charge, Adam Page would have gone over CM Punk. He would have never have lost that title to him. Um, and you did
Yeah,
all of that work to get to Kenny Omega and Adam Page to get Page over. And I'm telling you right now, Punk would have done the same for business whether he was the champion or not. So why not put the belt on someone that will help that person get more over? And that should have been Adam Page.
yeah.
Just saying. Just saying. The dream match that was built for this show was Bryan Danielson going up against Zack Sabre Jr. for the first time in, I don't know, like 11, 12 years or so. Um, and yeah, what did you think was going to happen? Those two were going to go out
They had
there,
a technical masterclass.
but
It's
they
amazing.
also beat the shit out of each other as well.
They
And
did.
people forget this about Zack Sabre Jr. That man can get physical. That man can throw uppercuts. That man can, because you look at him and you think, oh, he's just lanky and technical, but you don't realize that the man can throw strikes as well,
Yeah.
but they're not done in a conventional way. And these two just, perfect wrestling. No complaints about this.
Yeah, I mean, you have the two people who have been voted Technical Wrestler of the Year dating back to like 2009 or 8 or something. So you were going to get a technical match, but they can hit hard. I am so glad we actually got to have this match because Bryan Danielson is injured again and is out for the rest of the year, but will be back at Wrestle Kingdom 18. So at least there's that. But like, man, there's only a small time frame where Bryan Danielson hasn't been injured this year. So I'm glad that we actually got to have this because last time they announced it was last year's Forbidden Door,
Yeah.
and we didn't get it because Danielson was injured. So I'm glad the 1 month where he wasn't injured, he managed to. It kind of sounds like I'm burying him, but I mean it's just really bad luck.
No, he's had an
And
absolutely torrid time over the last year or so.
yeah, yeah. But every time he's come back, he's been incredible. And if he was here for most of this year, I mean, I probably think he would be a strong contender for Wrestler of the Year, but due to all the time off, he probably isn't. But I mean, every time he's been put in a high profile match, I mean, it's been amazing, and this was an amazing match.
Yeah.
Definitely, I don't know if it will be match of the year because there's been so many incredible matches this year. And I don't even think I don't know. You have to think if this is better than the Iron Man match from Revolution. But I think this was an amazing match. Definitely kept me interested the whole time.
Yeah. But we also, like, not on this show, but over the last couple of days, we did get the announcement that Danielson will be heading to Tokyo for the next Wrestle Kingdom, and we'll have that rematch with Okada. Um, and fingers crossed that he doesn't break his arm in that match, because
I know.
that was a solid match with a broken arm. Imagine what he can
I
do if he's able to get
Yeah,
through the thing without that.
yeah. The thing with that match is I was hoping for more in that match, but then you realize why you were hoping for more. It was because they were building to the last 10 minutes of the match, and then Brian Danielson got injured
Yeah.
10 minutes before the planned finish. So yeah, I mean you can see why it wasn't like it was a good match. Dave gave it like 4.5 stars, and I don't think it was 4.5 stars at all. But I thought it was good while it lasted. So I hope in front of the Tokyo Dome, in front of a large crowd, they have an excellent match. We'll see. Okada. Well, how can I say? Okada has not been like a. I don't want to say he's not like a top level worker because he's had good matches this year, but like he's at this point in his career where he does a lot of tags most of the year. He's not like the guy who used to go out there and just have amazing matches all the time. Like this
Well, he's not
G1,
he's not positioned to do so.
he's not positioned in there. That's
I
true.
think the thing you can maybe like point to is that he's G1 run this year. There's nothing off the top of my head that kind of springs to mind
Yeah,
where
nothing comes to
yeah.
mind.
But obviously the thing is that because he hasn't been the champion for most this year, he's not been positioned at the top to have the sorts of matches he would typically have. He's had like this 6-man tag run that he's had with Tanahashi and Ishii has actually been pretty good. And I've got on here from Destruction in Ryogoku, they defended against Alex Shelley, Chris Sabin, and Josh Alexander,
I heard
which
that
was
was
a
good.
really fucking good match, and they've had a bunch of like really decent 6-man matches. I think back to, I think it was last month. They took on was it Castagnoli, Mox, and Shota Umino, and that was a really tremendous match
I
as
remember
well.
that being a very good match. Yes.
Yeah, so like this, just them having these kind of wild 6-man tag matches is like a perfect place to put Okada. Where, and well, I'd say more specifically, a perfect place to put Hiroshi Tanahashi. God bless him, who is
Yeah,
not moving in
he's
the
not
best way at
moving
the
good.
moment.
Every time I've seen him, he's not moving good.
So this is like the perfect place to put those two, and I guess even Ishii as well, who can still go out there and bang out a 4-star
He's
match with
probably
a
had
big
more better
opponent.
matches than either of them this year. I don't know about Okada, but definitely Tanahashi.
I mean, Ishii is just him,
He's
and
he, he's really incredible. He's like almost 50, and he's still doing that kind of style that's really not good for your body. And you can see him coming down to the ring the way he's hurting. It's really
there are
amazing.
there are like three consistents in the world when it comes to wrestling. They're Will Ospreay, Shingo Takagi, and Tomohiro Ishii.
Yeah.
And usually, if you get some combination of the three of those together, you're in for a good time. Have we ever seen Ospreay and Ishii? I'm sure we have at least at one
I'm
time.
sure we have. And I'm
Yeah,
sure it's been awesome.
yeah. I can't think of it off the
I
top
don't
of
know
my
if
head though.
I don't know if it was this year,
I
but I think
definitely,
maybe they've had a G1 in the past. I can
it
look
would
it up.
have to be because I can definitely think
He's
of
47,
Shingo.
by the way.
I could definitely think of
He's like Edge's age.
huh?
He's 47.
He's 47. Tomohiro Ishii. Yeah, yeah.
Amazing.
He's getting up there. He's getting up there. God bless him. There's very few wrestlers who have like the best wrestling of their career in their 40s, but Ishii is yeah, he's one of them.
Okay, let's see. Tomohiro Ishii versus Will Ospreay. Yes, September 23rd, 2020, 4.5 stars. G1 Climax.
Or was it 2020?
Yes.
Okay, so that's like during the
And
clap crowd
also
era.
Rev Pro match from December 17th, 2022, four and three
Yeah,
quarters.
that makes sense. Oh, why don't I remember that
Yeah.
match?
I I don't know. You watch Rev Pro.
I
I
do watch Rev Pro. So 2022 last year. Let's have a look. Did I watch that match? September, did you say?
the Rev Pro match was December.
Oh, December. Okay. 2022 December. Du-du-du-du-du-du-du. Was that the 17th December?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I either I didn't watch it or because I've got one match from there which is Zack Sabre Jr. versus Leon Slater, but I don't have the Ishii Ospreay match. I have to go back and rewatch that and see. What the fuck? I
You
gave
would
the Iron
remember that
Survivor.
match.
I gave the Iron Survivor challenge match from last year 4.75. What the hell was I
that, that
smoking?
that was a really good match. I don't know if it was 4.75.
Yeah,
The Iron Man
yeah,
matches that I remember were better than the stipulations
yeah.
had
All
it.
right.
They were good
Um,
matches.
maybe I was having an interesting period over the Christmas period. But yeah, I think I need to go back and watch that EC Osprey match. Anyway, where the hell were we? Got massively sidetracked there. The last thing I was going to point out about WrestleDream. Oh yeah, so the main event, Darby Allin took on Christian Cage for the TNT title. Um, probably probably the high point of Christian in terms of a wrestling AEW. I guess the Kenny
Yeah,
Omega Impact World Title match where he won the
that
belt.
was good.
That was I think that was the first edition of Rampage if I remember.
Yes,
Um,
the premiere.
But in terms of like this heel side of Christian Cage, I think it's the kind of culmination of him as a heel wrestler, just a masterclass against Darby Allin, who is just the perfect babyface in all the right ways.
How
But
long is
also,
Darby Allin going to wrestle?
but I was going to say also a surprisingly or maybe unsurprisingly violent match where God
Very
bless him
violent.
Darby, but he nearly lost his arm on that fucking ring step.
Yeah, I'm going to remember that spot for a long time, and it's so ugly. A lot of ugly spots he does, and it's like, how long can you go?
Yeah, I mean, I
Like you're
wonder.
here for a good time, not a long time.
I want well, I wonder how much of that spot though was planned and how much of it
Probably
was.
it was probably planned.
Well, it was. I'd like to think that there was a version of that spot was planned, but probably not intending to go as violently
That
as it
yeah,
did.
like that
You
violent.
know.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you do a spot like that, the margin of error is so thin that when it does go the way it goes, what the hell? What can you say? It's like, well, of course it went as bad as it did because you're fucking doing like a body slam to the ring steps on the outside.
Yeah.
But a tremendous match. Like when it comes to AEW, and I've thought about this over the years with Darby Allin, and I think of him and I think of Orange Cassidy, of two guys who, regardless of where they are, regardless of what happens, they've got that kind of Jeff Hardy syndrome to them, where they're just always over. They just have that special sauce, whatever you want to call it, where they're always over with
Yeah.
the crowd.
That
And
different kind of charisma
yeah, and Darby
that
Allen
gets them over.
is one of those kind of wrestlers where he can just lose 9 times out of 10, and it
Yeah.
won't matter. But I do think that because I thought he came across as a convincing TNT champion, and I do wonder if you could at some point push him to the world title picture and it be viable because obviously he's on the smaller side, but he's just got a way
I think
about
with the
him.
right opponent, definitely.
Yeah. For me personally, and I've been playing Armchair Booker quite a lot this evening. I would love to see a world title program where they bounce the belt back and forth once or twice between him and Swerve Strickland, just because
Yeah.
of like the kind of built-in backstory that those two already have. I think there's something you can do around that, but um, next time they go to Seattle, there you go. If you're listening,
There you go.
TK, there is my suggestion. All right, that is nearly an hour on AEW. I guess we can do about 2 minutes on WWE because I got fuck all this month. Payback,
I
that
don't
was a
remember.
show.
I think the tag team styles changed. It was not. I think when I wrote my review on the site, I think I wrote something like, "This was a good show, but nobody's going to remember it a week later." And it's been like 3 weeks, 4 weeks since Payback, and I don't remember one single thing about the show. I think Shinsuke Nakamura and Seth Rollins had a pretty good last man standing match, and I think Cody Rhodes and Jimmy Uso won the Jey Uso won the tag team titles that they've already lost.
Actually, sorry, it wasn't even
That was
Payback.
a
It
good
was
match
actually
too.
the show was Fastlane. I can't even remember what the fucking
Oh
show was
shit!
called.
God. Well, both shows, nothing happened, and that's one of the
God,
things with Triple H booking.
I
When you get
cannot,
into the
I
fall
cannot
season after
believe
SummerSlam, there's nothing going on.
15,000 people attended this show.
I, WWE's hot right now.
Like this was a 5 match show.
Yeah, and I think it
Oh
lasted like a little under three
God.
hours, which is fine by me. But uh, WWE's hot right now. There's not really like one thing as to why, but they're very hot right now.
I
And they're
mean,
probably only going to get hotter when Royal Rumble season begins.
I think there's a couple of factors. One, you have, for whatever it's worth, John Cena has been back during the ongoing strike, which is now finished. So I
It
guess
just finished, so that was incredible timing on his part. He did the job to Solo Sikoa, and he did it about as best he could, and then that's it. And
I
then a
will
few
say
days later, the
this.
strike's over.
I will say this. When you think about wrestlers who are very much in the twilight of their career and doing the right thing to put the next generation over. I don't really think you can get a better example of that than John Cena, you know?
For
Like,
years, they've been pushing like he's this veteran, and like I don't know, it's always kind of weird because well, maybe it's because I don't know. To me, it's always just seemed kind of weird that he's this. They push him as this veteran that is past his prime, but you don't see that with too many others who are his age. I think he's about the same age as Edge, and they
he's
don't push Edge
46.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Edge is like I think 40. I think he's
I
almost
think Edge is
50.
49, actually.
Yeah, so they're only like a few years apart yet. You never see Edge billed as this veteran who can barely go and loses all the time. But with Cena, for whatever reason, they put that on him. It's kind of weird,
I
but
think it's partially
he's
because
not full
Edge.
timer, so I guess that makes sense.
I think there's a couple of reasons for that. John Cena has so much cachet in terms of if you beat John Cena, that should be considered a big deal. But also because John Cena is obviously wrestling in such a more of a part-time capacity that when he's here,
He was only back because of their strike. Let's be
yeah.
real.
So when he's here, you want to put people over him. Now, you can make the argument if Austin Theory was the right opponent for a WrestleMania match. And considering where Austin Theory is at this moment in time, I'd probably
Austin
say it wasn't.
Theory, there's a lot of people who like him. I don't. He does everything okay. There's not like one thing where I'm like, okay, well maybe there's something here. It's like
What was the last match he had?
everything he does is okay. He's an okay promo. He's an okay wrestler. He's an okay. He has a good look. I think that's a good thing about it. He has a good look, but I don't know. It's
Yeah,
not like Roman Reigns where they struggle with him as a babyface for years because he was always a good wrestler.
yeah.
He was always a good main event level wrestler, but but even with Austin Theory, he's not at that level. And they want him to
The
be, but he isn't.
the last time he was on TV was the 27th of October. He lost to Kevin
Yeah.
Owens. Um,
Yeah.
and before that, he lost to Dragon Lee on SmackDown. So, yeah.
Right now, he's kind of in a tag team with Grayson Waller.
Oh, yeah, there we are. Yeah,
So they're kind of doing that.
In
Don't
the
know where
words
it'll
of Bryan
go.
Alvarez, no buys.
I think Grayson Waller's not that bad of a promo worker. He's okay. He's fine.
I mean,
I mean, they're kind of at the same.
whatever.
They're kind of at the same level. Waller's kind of a better promo, but they're both okay wrestlers. Waller's kind of more charismatic, though.
They're both as just fucking generic as you can get. I'm not going to beat around the bush here. They're incredibly
I don't know.
generic.
Waller, there's a little bit more to than Theory. Theory is like if you create a wrestler and just leave it at normal, or
Yeah.
the when you first start the create a wrestler, that's what he looks like.
Yeah, no, it's pretty much it. Yeah. Yeah. All of this is far more interesting than this show. Like, I don't know.
I mean,
Carlito returned.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good for him. He got
how is
got new music.
Carlito is only 44. That is surprising.
Really? I thought he was a little bit older.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he was
He must have
really
been called up
young.
very early. Yeah.
Yeah.
He got new music, new crappy music. I don't know who makes the music for WWE now, but I mean, they're terrible. The people who make WWE music, I cannot. All the Street Pop Profits got new music a few weeks ago. Bland.
Yeah.
Nothing stands out about the music they put out, and
it's all utterly fucking dreadful.
One of the things about WWE is that they have such a deep library of songs and themes they can use for people who come back, and at least people remember the Carlito theme. Like when his music hit at the Puerto Rico show, this year people went ballistic, and then now you hear this new generic theme, and it's like, okay.
Yeah,
really weird.
One of the many issues that I have with the presentation of NXT is all the fucking music. All the music is just dreadful.
Yeah.
at one time in my life, I could still to this day, God knows why, if you was to play me the theme music of a Luther Reigns, I'd remember that. Probably says more about where I was in 2004, 2005.
Yeah, I mean
But
Jim
like NXT,
Johnston, it was good.
music is just
And
oh
even when Jim Johnston left, the people who came the CFO or whatever, they were good.
yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah.
they're the one who had the Asuka theme and Shinsuke Nakamura and
And
Adam
Finn, but
Cole,
the problem
Finn
they
Balor.
always the problem that CFOs had is that they knew how to make like a really catchy 12-second bit of music, but then they would loop
Glorious.
that over and over again. But you know what?
Yeah,
As long as I got those 12 seconds to work with, that's fine.
it was memorable.
It was
That's all you
memorable.
really need.
Yeah.
And the new Def Rebel Def, they're something called like that. They are horrible.
Yeah, and
I don't even want to use that word, but like
no, it is. But it's not even just the composition; it's the actual production as well. And now I'm a bit of a music nerd, so I kind of have an ear for this thing. But the actual like tone of the synths that they use, like it it sounds so artificial. It sounds so um just like plastic. And it kind of speaks to, a lot of the WWE product as a whole. It just doesn't have any
cookie
edge to
cutter.
it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just so cookie cutter. It's so fucking by the numbers and just blah. Yeah.
This is a good segue into WWE booking right now, which is, you know, the thing between the difference between Triple H and Vince McMahon is Triple H has a vision. He has a very long-term vision. You can already see some of the matches that are going to take place at WrestleMania. For example, you know that Becky Lynch and Rhea Ripley is probably going to be a match. You probably know the two Usos are going to have a match. You probably know it's going to be Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. Probably know there's going to be dissension in the Raw group, what's called the Judgment Day. I should know that because they open every damn show. But you can see all these programs in the long term. The problem is we're starting to plant those seeds in like September and August, and we have like several months until the Royal Rumble, whereas things really start to pop off and begin. And like last year, where things started to get real hot for them.
I just want to ask you,
Now
by the
it's
way.
like,
I just want to ask you, by the way, Brian, because you
okay,
mentioned the Judgment Day there and Rhea Ripley. Can you tell me one decent Rhea Ripley match she's had while she's been this champ?
the Saudi Arabia one was fine.
The five-way? What are you on
Yeah,
about?
I thought that was good.
That.
I mean, like not. I
Sure.
thought it was fine. I didn't have any problem with
Yeah, no,
it.
fine. I'm
There's been
talking
some
like
matches though where it's like it's this isn't working for me, and the Raquel Rodriguez matches didn't work for me.
no, no.
The
I'm
one with
talking
Charlotte
like
Flair where she won the title was excellent.
yeah, no, but I'm talking like since then in terms of like
Okay,
actually defending the
she
title,
hasn't defended the title a lot though.
There is
So
also that. It does feel like she's held the belt, but it's kind of the Roman Reigns syndrome, except she's on TV a lot more. Um,
yeah,
yeah,
she's
it's been a really weird
it
title
is.
reign so far, you know?
But she's going to face Zoe Stark at Survivor Series, and I think that's going to be a good match because Zoe Stark's really good. And I thought Zoe Stark looked good at Crown Jewel.
Mm,
I thought she stood out. Nia Jax, no. She's
mm.
back by the way. Whoop de doo.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, I mean we'll see, but like yeah, I can see that the title matches have been kind of underwhelming, but the one at Crown Jewel is probably the best one of the bunch. I'm not saying like it was like anything above 3 1/4 or anything, but like it's it was good.
Mm. Um, Yeah, the only thing of note I can think of from this month, I guess over the last couple months, Gunther continues to be kind of the one consistent in terms of like, if you need a good match, you'll get one from him, and
Yeah,
him and Tommaso Ciampa at the start of the month had a very solid match. Not as good as their NXT UK title match from a couple of years ago. I think it was the
no,
standard deliver show. That had a higher level of physicality to it, but it was still pretty good. But yeah, I agree that while the booking is fairly logical and consistent, it is moving at a glacial pace.
glacial.
But you could make the argument, well, Their shows are all fucking sold out, and they're continuing to book 10,000 plus seat arenas and filling the fucking things out. So I don't know. Don't you know?
Something's working.
Something's working here, as baffling as it may be. So
You
why try
can't
and fix something that ain't
you
broke?
can't really blast the product when I mean Triple H always goes to those press conferences and say we broke all the records, and
Yeah,
it's true.
yeah.
So
So
whatever they did last year, which is with the Sami Zayn turning on the bloodline and all that, that sent them a boost that they haven't gone off of yet.
yeah.
And,
Well, I mean, how much do you contribute to Cody Rhodes? I think that's one kind of
a lot.
question. Yeah,
I think people want him to win the title, and it should happen at WrestleMania. If not, I have no whatever.
because here's the
It's
thing.
really weird.
Here's the thing, and it infuriates me to kind of think about this, but obviously, WrestleMania happened and he didn't win the title, and we all,
No,
I think, quite rightly went, "What the fuck?"
when
And
I was at the press box and that happened, you could it was stunning. People
yeah,
groaned. You could just see people walking away immediately.
but here's the thing.
That wasn't like the night before where people stayed and were all happy
Yeah,
that
yeah, 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 yeah.
Kevin
But
Owens and Sami Zayn won the titles. It was amazing.
here's the thing. While you might, be able to look at the ratings being whatever they are, business as a whole has only gone from strength to strength since then. And
Yeah,
so you do kind of look at it as like, okay, well, did they do the right thing or not? And um, I guess maybe we have to look at if we do get to WrestleMania next year, which is in Philadelphia, if I'm right, WrestleMania 40.
yes.
Yeah. We get to 40 and Cody wins the title. And at that point, we see, does business stay where it is? Does it improve? Does it drop? I guess really only at that point then can we kind of start to
Yeah,
get a definitive answer on did they make the right decision last year? So I don't know. I guess we'll see. That is, of
we will
course,
see.
if he actually does win the Rumble and face Roman, and we don't finally get The
I
Rock
can't
versus Roman
imagine any
Reigns.
other scenario.
Can you
The Roman
imagine?
Reigns thing is starting to get ridiculous. Honestly, I mean, I thought it was ridiculous when Cody didn't win.
Yeah.
He's taking so much time off. He's not. I don't think his next appearance or match or whatever will be until next year. So it's like, do you really want somebody gone that long as champion? And it's like, what? Also, why is it still the undisputed title when there's a world title? That doesn't make any sense.
The thing that doesn't make any sense to me is that he comes back and they treat him as like he is obviously his title reign is historic, it goes without saying, but he they present him as like he's this all-conquering champion who takes on all challenges and wins all of his matches like in this kind of legitimate clean fashion, when I can't think of a single title defense he's had where he hasn't had
Every
fucking
match has had
interference.
Interference.
It's just
And
there's
then they're
there's
comparing it to like Bob Backlund's run and then
yeah.
Hulk Hogan's run and Bruno Sammartino's run. And it's like those guys wrestled like every week and defended the title every week on all these house shows. And Roman
there
Reigns
there is
appears a few times a year.
there is a narrative disconnect there that at
Yeah.
no point have they looked to try and kind of figure out what the fuck they're trying to talk about there. It's just
But
it's just baffling.
it's WWE.
Yeah.
We have the narrative, and this is the narrative we're presenting, and that's it. Roman Reigns is right there with some of the longest title reigns in history, and it's true. He's like number 3 or number 4 now. I don't think he's going to beat Bruno. I think he might beat Hulk Hogan's run, which when you think about it is also astonishing because he was champion for a long time. But yeah, it's I don't know about this run at this point. The stop point should have been last year or this year at WrestleMania, and it's just going. Everything like I never bought that LA Knight was going to beat him.
No.
I've never bought that anybody else he's faced since Cody was going to beat him. The person who I see him losing to is Cody, and it's like when are we going to get back to that? And it's probably WrestleMania. So anything from in between now and WrestleMania, it's like yeah maybe it'll be a good match. But even that Crown Jewel match, I know we're going to talk about it next month, but like at this point, Roman Reigns is pure like every other spot in that match early was like, I'm going to do a move, then I'm going to give my speech, my monologue. It's kind of getting like, okay, the whole run, the in terms of matches, the whole run is now starting to get to me like, okay, can we move on?
Yeah.
Kind of like that.
Yeah. Okay, I think that's all I have for WWE. So elsewhere, Impact had Bound for Glory, which took
I did
place.
not watch it. It's they go ahead. What was it? Friday or Saturday? That's the
I
problem with
bet
Impact for the rest of the
Brian,
time.
I know every single time we have an Impact show, I know, I understand why you don't get to watch
Okay.
these shows. I get it.
It went head to head with Collision, and then I think there was a Battle of the Belts that week too. So nope.
All I will say for the show, it was perfectly decent. I don't think, and to be honest, this has been kind of a running theme with Bound for Glory for however many years now. That the kind of like quote unquote biggest show of the year for Impact, it doesn't really ever feel like that. I think a lot of years Slammiversary feels like the bigger show than Bound for Glory does, you know. Um, but with that said, I think that the Hall of Fame speech with Mike Tenay,
I did see that. I like
inducting
that.
him and Don West was really, really good. Very emotional, obviously,
Yes.
for reasons with Don West passing early this year. But it's just great to see Mike Tenay. You know, he hasn't really kind of been seen in public for
Yeah,
at least
he's
over 10 years.
vanished.
Yeah.
A lot of times
Um,
the only times I hear from him is when Dave brings up his name on Wrestling Observer
yeah.
Radio.
So it was great to hear from him, and that was tremendous. And actually, on the show itself, really the only things of note, surprise, surprise, Mike Bailey and Will Ospreay had a very, very good match that you should definitely go out of your way to see.
I need to see it.
And yeah, just look, think of what those two can do. They went and did that. If you're a bit tired of the Bailey, because Mike Bailey does have a pretty specific formula for the way that his matches go. Like there's a bunch of spots that he will typically do in most of his matches,
Yeah.
but he's so fucking good and he's so athletic that you do look past those issues. And obviously as well with Will Ospreay and like his increased physicality over the last couple of years, it brought out a more physical side of Bailey in this match as well. So that is
Yeah.
definitely worth seeing. And the main event, Josh Alexander, Alex Shelley, not any kind of match of the year contender, but a really solid main event. You've got two very solid hands. Maybe a bit surprising that Shelley retained the belt here. Like in one aspect it's surprising, but in another it's pretty good because it means that because going into this, the whole thing was like, hey, you might be the world champion, and Alexander was like, I recognize you as the world champion, but you still haven't beat me, which is a very simple storyline, but it's effective, solid booking that I'm always here for. And yeah, Shelley won. He is now the as legitimate their world champion as you can get. It's still kind of surprising that he did beat Macklin and they've gone with him. This is, the first world heavyweight title he's ever had in a kind of major wrestling company. And it's awesome. It's awesome that he's getting this opportunity because he's kind of long been one of the better wrestlers of the 21st century and one of the most influential as well. So many wrestlers you can look at that have either emulated or in some way his style. Yeah, that is it for Impact.
Well, you're bearing the lead.
What's that?
TNA's back.
Oh yes, TNA is back. God, I forgot about
I mean,
this.
they ended the show with this vignette of all the old TNA guys like opening Pandora's box or something, and TNA's back. That's
Yeah.
starting January with TNA Hard to Kill. And boy,
Yeah.
is that an appropriate name.
I mean, since they started using that pay-per-view name, it's always been kind of like it's a bit on
It's
the
very
nose, but
ironic
sure. Yeah.
because there's been
Yeah.
so many times in this company's history where they should have died and they did not because something happened at the last minute where they were saved. Like Dixie Carter came in or Anthem came in and bought them a network so they can have TV on forever.
So I mean,
It's such an interesting promotion.
I one thing I wanted to ask, I don't listen to Wrestling Observer. Like, I'm curious about what Dave or Bryan, or Alvarez have thought about this TNA and whether it kind of matters at all. Because in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter, you know.
Well, like they say that they're going to run bigger shows, but like the problem with Impact or TNA or whatever is that you can go back to the nostalgia and there's some interest. And the clip I did of them, that did great numbers. Yeah, there's interest there, but the problem is getting people to the shows, and those shows, maybe they'll get a little bit more people for the first show, but like the problem with Impact is the problem with MLW and NWA, which, oh my God, where to even begin with them? But
Well, I would say that NWA probably has
NWA
a
has its own set of
significant number
problems.
more problems than
Yeah,
you know?
there's problems beyond, but they also all share one common problem is that AEW and WWE just dominate the market in terms of content and attention and everything.
Yeah.
They're just going to go head to head with them all the time, and if people are going to choose between Collision, which doesn't do great numbers but still blows anything Impact does out of the water, people are going to choose Collision because that's the show with the stars. And TNA, Impact, whatever, they have stars. They have good matches. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the product, I'm sure, but you have to. There's no competing with AEW or WWE right now because they're just everywhere, and there's so much little time for anything else, and that's why Impact is always going to be around because they have a parent company who just believes in them so much that they bought a network for them. I mean they bought Access TV with the idea we're going to put Impact on there, and that's the kind of loyalty or whatever that not a lot of promotions have,
Yeah.
and so they're going to be around for a long time still. They're always going to have money, I guess, and they're always going to bring in people, but they're not. I mean, they'll have good matches here and there, and I'm sure Dave will sometimes mention a match or run down a card, but like there's too much other stuff going on. That's the main problem with TNA. They had a shot back in 2010 to grow their base, and they decided to go with Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff, who only cared about bringing in old people and only cared about themselves really, and they put over his son Garrett Bischoff, and the Aces and Eights angle went nowhere, and
went forever.
they went forever, and there was about 10 minutes of wrestling on a 2-hour show. I mean that's like exactly what was not needed at the time, and they paid for it. I mean, and also they had Vince Russo there forever. And the big downfall of Impact was when uh, Spike TV at the time told them drop Vince Russo, and Dixie Carter was like, okay, and then kept him on anyway. And then they found out, and then they got canceled off Spike TV, and that's brought on years of irrelevancy.
Yeah.
But this is a completely new Impact. I'm not going to blame them for the previous company's faults. I mean, there's like Dixie Carter's gone and all that, but I mean they're paying for it still.
Yeah.
It's just
That's the thing.
it's just that they had that void that AEW eventually took over, and they had a chance to be that void to fill that void, and they blew it.
Yeah.
That's the story of them.
There's an alternate timeline where that 2005 2006 period of TNA was the legitimate I mean, at the time it was the legitimate alternative, and became the true competitor. Well, not even, it doesn't even have to be a true competitor to WWE.
It just has to be
had to be an alternative, and the problem is that there's now 300 different alternatives, because even if you don't want like North American wrestling, CMML is blowing up at the moment, and it's the hottest that's been.
They're getting hot.
New Japan, as patchy as it is, still, the big shows do deliver. can't say I'm particularly enamored about Sonata and Tetsuya Naito for the rest for the
Me
Tokyo Dome.
neither. So now it's
Um,
just kind of bland.
but I'm sure at some point, and again, the big shows do still deliver.
Yeah,
There's just too much wrestling, and it's very
it's too
hard
much.
for Impact slash now TNA. While I can see to some degrees why they've gone with this decision, um, really it just comes down to you just need to have like in a very rare circumstance where they are able to get, because the big thing next year is Will Ospreay is going to become a free agent. Where does Will Ospreay go? And I do think that he has a soft spot for TNA. He's kind of spoken in the past about the Unbreakable main event from 2005 was kind of the thing that made him go, I want to be a wrestler. And obviously he did the Bound for Glory show, which he didn't have to do. There was no need for him to do it, but he obviously has a soft spot for the company, so he did their biggest show of the year. I don't even know if they got a Will Ospreay, if that would be the thing that would kind of push them to the next level. Ospreay as a commodity in North America isn't really a proven thing. He's just not had enough time. Even with like the handful of matches he's had in AEW, and he's had some really good ones. There's nothing there that you can use to look at and say, would this one person be enough to turn a company around? So, and I'm not saying that he will go to Impact. I would imagine he probably wouldn't.
No.
Um, so
I mean that it's AEW or WWE, and if I were him, I don't know. I don't know if it I don't know.
I mean, look,
It's a
WWE
big
at
show. I
this
think
moment,
he would be a big star either way, I think.
WWE at this moment could offer him a very large sum of
Yes.
money.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see. We will see. Yeah, just a couple of last quick notes as well. Royal Quest 3 from the Copper Box in England, New Japan's annual event in the UK. I will say that Shingo Takagi and Tomohiro Ishii had the exact sort of match that you would think those two would have.
Yeah. The
And
show's great.
Zack Sabre Jr. and Will Ospreay also had the exact sort of match that you would think. As a whole, this was probably the weakest of the three Royal Quests that they've done. A lot of the undercard, and this is kind of the case with New Japan as a whole at the moment. So much of the undercard in these shows is just fucking dreadful, or just not necessary, or just you're just like, why am I sitting here watching this? Just get to the good stuff. And that's kind of a bit of a problem with Gato's booking in general at the moment.
Yeah.
Is so much of like the first half of these shows is just it's painful to get
Nothing.
through. Just
Yeah.
nothing. Just undercard tags, if that, or Tongaloa and fucking Chase
That's
Owens.
always been a problem with him. But now it's kind of seeping into the big shows because
Yeah,
there's just so much big shows now. I think
yeah.
there's like 3 different Destruction shows that were like pushed on this tour, right? Or 2?
Two, I think.
Okay. Yeah, the thing with New Japan is again with AEW WWE, I barely have time to watch it. I didn't watch Destruction, and I did hear that or Royal Quest 3, and I did hear that Will Ospreay and Umino had an incredible
Yeah,
match.
yep,
I need
yeah,
to go
yeah.
back and watch.
Went like 40 minutes. One of the longer
Wow.
matches I've seen Umino have, but he was with Osprey the whole way with that one. Yeah, definitely worth checking out
Okay.
at some point. That's it really. I think we've got everything covered that we needed to cover for this month. As always, Brian, I'm going to start with you. Who's your wrestler for the month of October?
Oh. I have to go back and look at my star ratings. I don't think I even updated my star ratings. I should have done that last night. How about you go first, and then I'll see if I agree.
All right, I will probably go. Just by looking on here, I'll probably go Zack Sabre Jr. Actually,
Okay.
I haven't got too many people on here that have like multiple matches. It's Zack and Will have got, I think, 2 matches each. But I really liked the Zack Sabre Jr. Bryan Daniels match, obviously. And Osprey and Zach, they can't have anything less than like 4.5. So yeah, I think I'll go with Zach for this month, just to mix it up a little bit.
I don't really have a wrestler of the month. I can maybe Dragunov. I think I'm going to talk about NXT actually in a little bit. You're going to be stunned because you don't seem to have a lot of interest in NXT, well, whereas I do. Yeah, Ilya Dragunov I think has been great in this month. I mean, he had a tremendous match with Carmelo Hayes at Halloween Havoc. Yeah, I just think of him, and I think he's incredible. He's has that intensity. He has the work rate. I even think, despite his size, he can be something on the main roster when they call him up. Yeah, I was just really impressed with him at Halloween Havoc, and that was like the first name that popped up because I haven't seen a ton of Will Ospreay stuff this month because it's been New Japan or an Impact, and I haven't caught up on that yet. AEW, there's nothing that's been like really stand out. I could go with Zack Sabre Jr. or Bryan Danielson too, based on the performance of their match. MJF, I had a really great match with Kenny Omega, but I don't know. So yeah, I think maybe I'll just go with Ilya Dragunov. I think
All right,
that's a good choice.
that's a very solid choice. Your match of the month of October.
Probably the Sabre match with Bryan Danielson because that was just so amazing to see live. It was so cool to see live. It was everything you'd expect it to be in a match between those two, just a technical masterclass, and they hit hard and people were into it. Yeah, that was really, really good stuff.
For me, I actually have quite a few matches that I gave 4.75 to. I've got nothing that hit 5. Um, I will just say actually one match that we didn't talk about here, and that might actually be higher than anything else. Yuma Ayagi defended his a Triple Crown title against Kento Miyahara,
Oh, I
and
heard
that
about that.
match is really, really good. That and the Nakajima match that happened a couple of
I do
weeks
hear that
after.
Nakajima is now the Triple Crown champion.
Yes, he is. Yes, like the ending of this match was tremendous, right? So Ayagi wins, and then Miyahara's on the outside, and he's up against the railing, and he's crestfallen. And Nakajima just kind of comes through the crowd wearing a suit, and he's got like a bouquet of flowers in like a vase.
Hmm.
And he comes over, and he's like standing next to Miyahara, and he's like, "What the fuck? I was gonna give these to you. I was gonna come in the ring and be like, you were gonna be the new champion, and like, we were gonna have this moment, and you fucked it now." And he just smashes the vase over his head, and it's just a tremendous like old school
And
angle.
I think that's the match for their. Oh, no, is that a future match between Nakajima's defending the title in a match soon, right?
I don't know who Nakajima's up against. So Nakajima beat Ayagi a couple of weeks after that angle happened. Um, I'm not up enough on All Japan to know like if that's his first
Yeah,
defense or what the deal is. But yeah, so Nakajima obviously jumped from Noah to All Japan. I don't know if he's like
I'm
officially signed
surprised
with
by
them.
that.
Well, look, I mean
Unless it's
Nakajima.
like a stopgap between this and maybe like Wrestle Kingdom where he debuts or something. I thought he was going to New Japan for sure.
Maybe. I mean,
I don't
look,
know. I
he's
thought so, I
still.
thought the same thing about Jake Lee, and then Jake Lee jumped to Noah. So I don't know.
I don't think Jake Lee was ever going to New Japan.
And I don't think Jake Lee. I've not heard great reviews
No,
about. So
no. I think with Nakajima, like
Nakajima's better.
Nakajima is still ridiculously young for how long he's been in the business.
He
Um,
was like 16 or something when he broke in, right?
Crazy, yeah. So
Yeah.
you could still just it could be a case of like, hey, I'm gonna do this for a couple of months. I'm gonna get a reign as
Yeah.
triple crown champion, and then they might go back to ARG, which is perfect. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So, yeah, I think I'll actually go with that. It's a really solid match worth checking out. And finally, your promotion of the month. It's slim pickings, let me say.
I know AEW didn't impress me this month. WWE is boring. Didn't watch anything else, so I'm gonna go with NXT because I like their TV show. Believe it or not, and
I'm
it's
actually
not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but There's things there that I like, and what I like is I like seeing new faces frequently, and you do see that on NXT. There's always a good match, which there's Nathan Frazier. There's a bunch of these great Dragunov, Carmelo Hayes. There's always one match that's really good on there per week. So I can't complain too much about the work. And of course, there's people there who are so green. Some of this breakout tournament stuff with new women, they were very green, but there's potential. Lola Vice and Kalani Jordan. I think there's potential in both of them.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, the stuff with Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams, I think, is really good and compelling. And I like the Chase U stuff. There's stuff that I like on that show enough to where I always enjoy watching it, even if it isn't like a home run or if it's not like completely good. But like, I watch NXT and I watched that Dynamite from last weekend. It's like there's no real contest about what was the better show, because there was a show that was structured and made sense, and then there's a show where there's just 10,000 things going on, and none of them were any good, except for maybe the wrestling. Maybe the wrestling was better on Dynamite than NXT, but there's a lot more things in wrestling than wrestling sometimes. So yeah, I'll go with NXT. I like the Halloween Havoc shows.
No, fair enough. I'm just going to abstain. I don't have a pick.
Okay.
I just didn't like wrestling in October, so fuck it.
And even though there's a lot of great matches. The thing with it is sometimes there's more to wrestling than wrestling. And Dynamite and AEW this month, there's some hits and there's definitely some misses on those shows. And WWE is just kind of there and boring but okay. And anything else, it just kind of falls by the wayside. I wish all the NWA stuff happened this month, because man, I have a lot to say about that, and I think we'll probably have more to say about it when we get by the time December rolls around, because I'm not hearing good things about the NWA. Not that I ever have, but
yeah,
boy, you hear about that angle at the pay-per-view. That was one of the most destructive. From what it sounds like, it's one of the most destructive angles anybody's ever put out. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, on that note, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much for listening. As always, we appreciate anyone who gives our podcast a shot. As always, I am on Twitter at Lithium Project. Bryan is at BR26. We're going to leave it for there. We will see you at I guess sometime at the start of December, and we'll start wrapping up this crazy year.
Yeah, we should do another end of year awards show too.
Yeah, I would suggest maybe this year we just skip out all the B awards and we just stick to the major ones, because that went on for quite some time last year.
Yeah, I like some of the B awards though. Maybe we can focus on the A awards, but then bring up some of the B awards.
That's fine. I'm happy to be selective.
We'll figure it out. We have a month to figure it out, but we'll do a show.
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next month for another installment of the Grap Up.